All right, guys, here we are reading to lesson number 1 this week. We're going to talk about Mesoamerica again, and we're going to talk about Mesoamerica, and remember that just means Middle America, that area kind of, a little bit of North America, lots of Central America, Middle America. All right, so our second vocabulary word is influence. Influence just means to affect something. If I influence you to do something, then I'm going to kind of cause you to do something or change the way you would normally do something. Um, an artifact. An artifact is just an object. It could be a piece of pottery. It could be a piece of clothing. People study it to try to find out things about the past, maybe the way people lived or things people did. An irrigation system is a system, a method of delivering water, not like melting snow or rain. When we talk about an irrigation system, we're talking about a method of delivering water that is man-made. Okay, so like a hose. A climate is just the average weather conditions. We talked about that before, but I just wanted to review it. And if we hear the word thrived, it just means we're doing well. Okay, if you're thriving, you're doing well. All right, so let's start this one. Nations of the pre-Columbian Americans. How did the Toltecs and Olmecs influence the Mesoamerican culture? Here we go. The three largest and most powerful civilizations in pre-Columbian Americas were the Maya in Central America, the Aztec in central Mexico, and the Inca in the Indies of South America. These civilizations thrived and left behind impressive artifacts that have taught modern historians much about their cultures. Okay, so all this paragraph is telling us was that the three biggest, most powerful civilizations, which a civilization is just a human society, in the pre-Columbian Americans, they were the Mayans, the Aztecs, and the Incas. Okay, these civilizations did really good, and they left behind objects that have told the historians and the people who study the past a lot of things about their culture. Okay, so that's how we know about things that happened in the past through artifacts. All right, second paragraph. Both the Maya and the Aztecs were influenced by the Olmec civilization, the earliest known civilization in Mesoamerica. Mesoamerica is the region that is now Mexico and Central America. In pre-Columbian times, it was the most densely populated region of the Americans. The Olmec lived along the Gulf Coast of modern-day Mexico in tropical rainforest and lowlands from around 1200 BCE and 400 BCE. Sculptures and temples indicate that kings or priests led the Olmec society. This focus on religious leadership influenced later civilizations in the region. At former religious centers characterized by pyramid-shaped temples, giant stone heads weighing 10 tons stood up to 11 feet tall. The Olmec also developed a form of writing, as well as a calendar. Through their trade networks, the Olmec were able to spread many characteristics of their culture, religion, architecture, and social structure north to the Valley of Mexico and around Central America. Okay? So the Mayas and the Aztecs, they were both influenced by this Olmec civilization, okay, which was the earliest known civilization in Mesoamerica. Mesoamerica, it's the region that is now Mexico and Central America, okay? It's kind of that little area. Well, it's not little. Okay, so in pre-Columbian times, it was densely populated, which means it was very populated. It was a very populated region of the Americas. And the Olmec, they lived off the Gulf Coast, okay? So sculptures are just going to be like sculptures. You know what a sculpture is. Sculptures and temples, they indicate the kings or the priests that led there. Okay, so you look and you see these things. And today's society too, we see sculptures and they tell us a lot about things in the past and things of today. Okay, this focus on religious leadership was influenced later civilizations in the region. Okay, so they also had religious centers that were shaped like temples. They had giant stone heads that weighed 10 tons and were 11 feet tall. That's really big and that really weighs a whole lot, okay? The Olmec, they had writing, they had a calendar, they had trade networks, okay? They also were able to share and spread to the Mayas and the Aztecs their culture, their religion, Their architecture, which is the way that they built things, their social structure, which is kind of the way that their families were set up or the way that people interacted with each other. So these are all the different ways that the Olmec influenced the Mayas and the Aztecs. All right, here we go. In some ways, the Olmec were similar to the 4 early river valley civilizations that developed along the Nile, Tigris, Euphrates, Indus, and Yellow rivers. Although the Olmec did not need to develop irrigation systems because they received plenty of rain, they did need to create drainage systems to control the water from this rain. Like the Fertile Crescent in Mesopotamia, the soil was rich enough to support farming. As mentioned above, Olmec society was based around its religion, and they created pyramid-like structures similar to those found near the Nile and Tigris-Euphrates rivers. Also, like the first major civilizations in the Fertile Crescent, Nile River, Indus Valley, and Honghe Valley, the Olmec showed the first evidence of many economic, social, and cultural patterns that would shape future civilizations throughout the region. Okay, so this paragraph just talks about how the Olmec, they developed their civilization or their human society near a river. Okay, so rivers were important because they provided water sources. You could go on boats. Lots of different reasons that water sources were important. Still are today. Everybody needs water to survive. Okay, so the Olmec, though, they didn't need irrigation systems. They didn't need man-made watering systems. They actually had too much rain, and they needed to be able to drain the rain to prevent flooding. So they prevented some drainage. Okay, so they did have to do that. We also know that the Olmec society was based around religion because of the pyramids that they had, and the Olmec society showed us the first evidence of economic, which is money or financial type things in their society, social interaction, cultural, their beliefs and their behavior patterns. And all of these things went to shape the future and future civilizations or human societies in the region. Okay, so the Olmecs really brought a lot of important things to us: economic, social, cultural, religious things. They taught us about drainage. Okay, here we go. Next paragraph. The Toltec were a warrior society that lived in what is now central Mexico. From the 900s through 1100s, they created an empire through conquest and military strength. The Toltec military power provided a model for future civilizations like the Aztec. Many scholars believe that Toltec culture and religion also had a strong influence on future civilizations. Okay, so the Toltec were a warrior society. So a warrior society means that they were like a fighting society. Okay, they had military power and military strength. When we talk about conquest, we talk about winning something through a war. So the Toltecs created their empire or their area that they controlled through winning war with their military strength, okay? And lots of scholars or people who study ancient history, they think that this Toltec culture and religion had a strong influence on these future civilizations, okay? Here we go. Last paragraph, guys. The Aztec and the Maya each branched away from their common origin and developed their own unique features. The Inca built a large empire in the Andes Mountains of South America. The cultures and characteristics of these empires were all affected by the climate and geography of the regions where they developed. This was also true of smaller Mesoamerican groups. So all this is saying is that the Inca, the Maya, the Aztecs, where they broke away and they started their empires and developed their own kind of culture and unique features, all of that was affected by the climate. And if you remember from our last lesson and from earlier, when we talk about climate, we're talking about the weather. And when we talk about geography, we're talking about how the land is, What type of things do they have to deal with in the land? Okay, is it rocky? Is it dry? Are there mountains? Are there water? Are there deserts? Okay, all of this is going to depend how their civilizations develop. All right, if you have any questions, let me know.